Hello, this is a quick tutorial to remind you how to set up your Peter the Great outline. You should have already watched the sample tutorial that was about 17 minutes long that talked to you about the parts of an outline. Remember, tomorrow in class, you will have a quiz that will ask you what are the different components of your outline, such as explaining to me what is the two, the A, the one, the specs, the analysis. But I wanted to just clarify once again what you're doing today in class with Peter the Great. I know that our instruction on Thursday was quick, so this will help if you have any questions. So on Thursday, we began the process of setting up your outline by working on the Peter the Great section. In your outline already completed, you should have your thesis, which is based around the question, Machiavellian principles were or were not necessary to make a political leader strong and successful. Your A, B, and C are your proof areas, and your proof area focus for class today is to work on Peter the Great. So that is A. You'll notice that the A and 2 statement are the same, and that's because your entire 2 section, which goes all the way from Roman numeral 2 down to B2 analysis, that is going to be all about Peter the Great. When you finish with your last analysis for B, you will then go on to your next monarch, which will either be Elizabeth or Louis XIV. So your section 3 will be about a different monarch. Okay. On Thursday, we also began to set up the outline, and remember how it worked. We set up our proof sentence, which is going to give us our big, broad statement about Peter the Great using Machiavelli to control Russia. Then in our A statement, we put many of Peter the Great's domestic policies and actions reflected Machiavellian principles. Now, the reason why I bolded domestic was because at 1 and 2, your 1 and 2 analysis for part A are going to be about 2 of Peter's domestic policies. You're going to allude to Machiavellian principles, and you're going to explain how they support the thesis. When you get to B, and this is the section we talked about briefly on Friday, but I know there was still some confusion. Thursday at the end of class. When you get to B, you're then going to create a new sentence that will switch focus. You're now going to talk about the foreign policies and actions of Peter the Great. And so this is going to be about stuff that deals with Russia and other countries. And you should have 2 specs for that specific section. All right. So B is 1 and 2 all the way through analysis. A is 1 and 2 all the way through analysis, and that's about domestic. So A is about domestic, 2 domestic specs, and B is about 2 foreign policy specs or actions taken by Peter the Great. Okay. On Thursday, we typed in our first specs. Remember, for example, I put blah, blah, because I don't know what your specs is about. It should use the question and it should be paraphrased with your notes in complete sentences. At the end of every specs, you should have an in-text citation that says Peter the Great video. From there, you work on your 1 and your analysis. Each of these is considered a spec set. So the 1 specs and analysis is not the same as your 2 specs and analysis. Treat them as different entities. For your 1, just a reminder, you should allude to the Machiavellian principle that you decide exemplifies the specs. So you could say like Machiavelli encouraged a prince to be feared than loved. And Peter did this when he took action against his sister Sophia, period. So you should introduce the principle and you should introduce the specs. And then the specs would explain what Peter did to his sister Sophia. And it doesn't talk anything about Machiavelli. Then for your analysis statement, you should have 2 sentences. The first sentence should explain how whatever this specs was about, if Peter took action against his sister Sophia, how does that prove that he's following Machiavelli's principle of fear over loved? Because, he punished his sister by taking a strong action against her and taking her out of power. Then the second sentence should say, through these actions and following the principle, how does that prove that Peter the Great was a strong and successful leader? He would do anything to keep his power to be an absolute leader of Russia. Okay. Then you would go to your second specs, but this is completely different than your first one. Where you should always start is put your fact in first. Choose your second domestic policy, and it goes right here. Then you create your 2 statement, which introduces the principle and the specs, and your analysis will 1 explain how it proves that Machiavelli's principle is necessary, and 2, it will prove how that leader was a strong or successful leader. Okay. Then you'll go on to B, and you'll work on your foreign policies and actions, and you follow the same model. The difference is that your specs should be about foreign policy or actions that he took, such as the war with Sweden. You could talk about Franz Timmerman. You could talk about other things that deal with someone outside of his country that help him make policy, a war that he went to. You could talk about what happened with the Ottoman Turks. Those would serve as examples for this particular set, okay? And then just remember, by Tuesday, this entire section, your first draft of it, it should be completed. If you have to fix it, you will have an opportunity to go back and fix it. When I say that it's due, it means that on Tuesday, I want to be able to give you feedback on this section so you can go back in and correct it as we go through the process, because the completed outline will be due by Sunday. Okay? All right. I hope this helps. Please email me with any questions that you may have. Good luck.